Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with Nate Payo, the show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
Hello, welcome again to the All In podcast with Nate Payo. Of course, I'm your host, Nate Payo. Today, I'm joined with Donnie Tuttle. He is the success coach for PurposeDriven Leaders. He's got a podcast. He's got some speaking gigs he's been doing. He's also an author. He's just doing amazing, great things. So, Donnie, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Good, man. Thank you for having me, Nate. Appreciate
Thanks for coming on.
Being all in.
Yeah, awesome. So, we always like to talk about how we meet people and how connections are made. And one of the things, at least for me, because I'm pretty new to podcasting, was like, hey, when I'm going to get going, like, how am I going to make connections and get guests on my show of people like, you know, especially I don't know, or get introduced to people and be on their show and help promote it. And since I've been doing that, that hasn't really ever been a problem. Like, even the people just kind of like come into your path, especially when you can't just sit at home, wait for the phone to ring, but you got to kind of be out there and be in the space of, hey, where do people hang out? And I started meeting people and one person led to another, and I got introduced to you, Donnie, and you had me on your show. And we had a great conversation and decided like, hey, let's flip the script a little bit. Let's turn it around and you come on my show and I'll get to find out who you are and what you're about. So I think it's cool how we met and how when you're just kind of open to where the journey goes, you don't know who's going to come into your life and who you're going to meet, but it's definitely been interesting and a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I think if Carnegie had written the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, if he did that today, it would include podcasting. Right. Yeah. There's no question that it's such a powerful way to meet people and to get to know them that, I don't know, for whatever reason, the element of if you reach out to someone and say, hey, can we talk for an hour? They're probably going to say no. Right. But when you frame that in the, hey, like, would you be willing to jump onto a podcast interview? It's amazing how many people who normally would say no would say yes, and it's really kind of the same thing. So, I've met some great people on here. It's a great resource. Yeah,
and I think that's really cool is the ability to kind of relate to people or get to know them or see a different side of them. Like we put our pictures up on social media, and we produce content or we write posts, and we do this, and we like look a certain way. And then when you actually like get somebody on the podcast and you see how they move and you see how they interact and you just have a conversation with them, it's the perceptions I think we have of how people are going to be and what they're going to talk about. Like, I'm always thinking everybody's going to be all so serious. And then they turn out, they're like, hey, they're smiling, they're having a ton of fun. And it's trippy how that works. And I think it's cool if you're out there to meet people, to do a podcast, just for the simple fact of you're going to meet people. And it doesn't take a lot of effort to get started. Like you can just, you can download an app, I think called Anchor, and just get rolling on your iPhone and just have conversations and figure out if you like it or not, and talking to your friends or talking about whatever it is you have in mind, and just see where it goes. And then you meet people and you get a chance to connect on a deeper level than just these 2-minute glimpses of people on social media, and your connections just grow exponentially. Like, how long have you been podcasting?
Let's see. I feel like I'm at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, like a podcaster anonymous meeting. I started my first podcast. It was called Sales Heroes, probably about 4.5 years ago. And when I first started, I think we'd been inspired by like JLD, right? John Lee Dumas and Entrepreneur on Fire, and some of those people back then. Maybe it was it was probably about 4.5 years. It had to have been about that. My wife and I had we had packed up our kids to go see snow for the first time. So like you, we live in a sunny climate. And we have 8 children. None of them had ever seen a flake of snow in real life. And they decided for one Christmas they didn't want gifts. They were all in on, going to a vacation home rental. And we drove all the way up to the border of Canada in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and never saw snow, but enjoyed the heck out of the whole time. And on the way up, we had been listening to, of course, some of our favorite podcasts, as well as a book from Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Workweek. Mm-hmm. And on the way back, the question is like, how can we have this location independent life? And the answer was, and this is kind of funny because it never happened that way. And I'm like, but I thought that I could come back and I could become some kind of podcasting star. And like I would monetize this thing. It would be great. And while that didn't happen, it actually did lead to us being able to do exactly what we wanted. I thought I would be able to just have life on my own terms as a podcaster, right? Mm-hmm. But what ended up happening was we were able, like I just met some really cool people. And again, just like the element I talked about earlier, where like I'm talking to authors, I'm talking to some of my heroes. Now they're willing to talk to me. Like it was this crazy thing. And then you realize when you're talking to them, you're like, man, I'm not that different from that guy. He's not that much smarter than I am. Like, mm-hmm. And it just made some things possible. And actually a job found me through that podcast. And that job was what opened the door for us to be able to become location independent. So
Did you end up relocating? I know you're still in Florida, right?
Right now, so we actually took a 3-year journey around the United States and around into Mexico as well, where we would move. We gave everything away, Nate, and sold a couple items, gave most of it away. And we loaded us and our 8 children up into 2 cars. And we would go from, we left Florida. And we would go from one vacation home rental to another every 3 or 4 months. And so we traveled the United States. We went, Mexico, and we ended that almost a year ago. And we've been mm-hmm. at St. Augustine Beach since then. And so I'm getting the itch, though. I want to get back out. We've taken a few small trips, but nothing big. And I'm ready.
You're a brave soul, taking eight kids all over the place, but I got one, and I couldn't imagine taking 8. But I'll tell you this: I had my old neighbor. He used to have, well, he still does. He had 8 kids, and I was like, "Man, 8 kids is a ton. Like, how do you deal with it?" He's like, "After the 4th one, like it didn't matter how many we had."
Oh, yeah. That's so true. I would say the same thing. It's like you hit 4, you're freakishly large, and then like it's just they kind of like they become a self-maintaining machine when the oldest hits like 16 or 17 as well. So like
he had, I think at the time I think his oldest was 21 and his youngest was like 4 or 5, and it was just like, hey, they drove this ginormous like 14 passenger van, and it was just like, if he was busy, the kids would go pick up the other kids. So it was like he had a ton of help. So
yeah, we've had all the weird vehicles, and it's nice to be back into like, because we have so many that are older now. Like, so it's nice to be driving like regular stuff now.
Easier to find a parking spot, get in and out of tight corners. Yeah.
It doesn't. You don't have the little beep back when you back up. Yeah, all of those things. Yes.
So I want to ask you a little bit more about like this idea of location, I guess, independent living. Mm-hmm. And to me, I've had a similar epiphany where it's like you start down this path of like, hey, I think my life could be better if I did it a little differently. And for you, it was, independent living, and other people, it's other things. But you start having this idea. You start contemplating like, hey, how could I be pursuing something different? And maybe that leads you to this idea of a destination, but you're not sure how to get there. So you do things. to kind of put you on that path. You say, I'm going to go and I'm going to be a podcast superstar, a mega star. But a lot of times our ideas don't pan out exactly as they are. And I think part of it is at our core, they're not in alignment with who we are. So we have this concept of where we want to go, but then we don't know how to get there until we discover, I like to call it my voice, my message. You're referring it to as your purpose, and I think a bigger word would be like your calling. But when you start down this journey, you start figuring out what it is, what your purpose is. So, how did you move into going from this person that was looking for a lifestyle, a vision of how they wanted to live their life, to discovering your purpose and impacting, and how is that impacting others by figuring out your purpose?
Man, that's there's a lot in that. What I would say just in regards to purpose, I like in its simplest form, I believe that we all have a people that we're passionate about, and it can happen when you're selling. You're like, oh, I love these people. Okay, those are your people. What do they need? What are your gifts and talents that you have? Where does your heart sing when you are allowing those gifts and talents to be used to bless others? That's your place of purpose. That's where heaven meets earth, and it's within you as much as it's without of you. You don't have. It's not something I've found looking on mountains or anything like that. Now, for us, I think this is a big indicator too of where a lot of that purpose is. It's not something that's necessarily there's a code inside of all of us. And I think that when we follow that code, certain things come out. And so for us, the idea, we'd always wanted to get out. And for whatever reason, we would say, no, Nate, we can't do that. No, not this time. No. And so ultimately we had to step back and say, well, why the heck not? And really when people say, well, why do you do this traveling thing? The biggest thing was we were like, why not? And in the why not, we were able to explore. So I think purpose is something to be explored. And just like anything else, like if you don't, like it's a place where you're at play. And if you're not, if you're not bopping around in that area, it's something that's foreign and very formal. Whereas really I don't find that it is that. And so, for us, the why not was really the beginning of that. And then we started off with a lot of dreaming, a lot of visioning. I do believe what you're saying about alignment is a huge key. And if you've had something in you and it's there for years, that's probably something you ought to be listening to. Mm-hmm. Right? How to do it? Like none of us live in a science lab, so we're not going to just know immediately how to do it. Just start moving in that direction. And it's interesting that what we have found is that things just line, like it's like as you're moving towards your purpose starts moving towards you. And we had crazy things. Nate, I've got to share this with you because this is the craziest thing. All right, I'm looking at something. So do you know my last name?
Yeah.
All right, that's pivotal for the story. So we were at the first stop in this journey. Something happened with my paycheck at this new job that was like it was confused and basically I didn't have one. And so we were like, this is hard. We don't have the money we thought we had, and I was supposed to be selling, and selling it was much different from my old hometown of Gainesville, Florida. Mm-hmm. And we were walking around. It was a beach town in Charlestown, Rhode Island, near Narragansett. And as we're walking this pebbly beach daily, I'm kind of kicking the sand saying, what in the world am I doing? And just to kind of like illustrate a little bit of like, man, here's how things are kind of lining up for you too. It's not just you doing the work. We were walking along and I see this thing that's like this, like, wow, this is like an antique brick. This thing is, whoa, that's cool. And I pick it up. Now, Nate, the neatest thing about the beach is like there are so many pebbles on that beach that when the waves come in, you don't just hear, you hear clickety, clickety, clickety. Like you hear all these pebbles and so like, wow, this thing is old. This thing should have been broken apart. What is up with this? And I pick it up and I turn it over, and I don't know if you can read this.
Yeah, I can. Tuttle.
What? What? So it's like, it doesn't, like, Smith would have been cool.
Mm-hmm.
Tuttle is not like a name that a lot of people have. And I did the research. It was from a company that was like 100 years ago in Connecticut. And it was just such a cool thing. And for me, it was almost like I don't want to say a confirmation, but the reality is that as you march towards your calling marches towards you. It's like, you're in the right place. It felt difficult, but you're in the right place. And sure enough, things got easier, along the journey.
Yeah, they tend to. And I always believe, like, hey, this has been my path. Like, I've felt this, I guess, something inside of me said, like, hey, you should be doing more. You're not living up to maybe what you were brought here to do. And I didn't know what it was. This is even like 15, 20 years ago. It's just kind of like, I just was kind of going through life, living it for me. Nothing like super selfish. I was just kind of going through life just like anybody else does. I'm going to work every day. I'm hanging out with friends and I'm doing stuff. I just like, hey, I feel like I should be making a bigger difference than I am. And I would think of an idea, an entrepreneurial type idea, and I'd maybe trace it, I'd maybe start it, and it would not pan out as I planned. And like 3 or 4 times at least, big stuff where I actually did things, but I've had like a bazillion ideas that kind of maybe lasted, a few hours or a few days of thought on it. And I'd always give up, or I always, kind of quit on it when I got going. And I'd be like, you know what, maybe this idea in my head is just crazy talk, and it's not something that I really am destined to do. It's just, my head's just giving me random thoughts, and I abandon the idea and kind of say, hey, let's not do that again. And then it always come back. It always like repeat. I was like, I keep feeling like I have this calling.
That's an indicator.
So,
yeah.
And so this time I said to myself, like, I'm not going to come up with an idea and try to force my calling into an idea and hope it works. This time I'm just going to kind of throw it out there and see what happens, and kind of let the opportunities or the answers come to me. And as I do more, which I think you talked about, you're just putting yourself in places where you're starting and you're figuring it out. It's just like, hey, the right people are going to come into your life, the right bricks with my name, maybe they'll show up in my life, and it'll be an epiphany moment that you're on the right path. And you're going to help and inspire others by serving them, and you'll just see where it goes. And so for me, like, I've felt a calling. I felt like I've got a purpose that's bigger than what I'm doing, but it's a difficult thing to figure out. And I think when people have that, or they have a desire to do something, they think, well, I don't have it figured out. I don't know where to start. And I because I don't know where to start, I don't have it figured out, I'm not going to. And I think you even had a point on it. Like, you're like, hey, I'm going to be a podcasting rock star. And you created a podcast, and that brand has since changed. Your message has probably changed a little bit. It's pivoted as you learn more about yourself.
Oh yeah.
And you kind of roll into it. So to me, I'm always like, why figure it all out? Because wherever you start in your vision of where you want to go isn't going to be the end result. So if you're not going to end up exactly where you want to go, you might, but most likely you're going to go some other version of it. And that's why I like the idea of a lifestyle. Like, don't vision yourself with a certain task and accomplishment. Like, I'm going to have a podcast with 5,000 downloads in a week. Like, have a vision of like, I want to live my life that's location independent, because then it doesn't matter how you get there. You'll find out multiple ways of getting there. You'll find out solutions. And I love Tony Robbins' book about money, and I don't remember the name of it, but he starts talking about, living a lifestyle of a billionaire jet setter is not, you don't need to do it money-wise as much as you think you do to have that lifestyle. Somebody said, hey, I want to live on the beaches and like travel the world. And it's like, well, yeah, you just did it. Like, you didn't have to have $1 bazillion to go do it either.
No, and that was kind of where it started, was because we actually, when we got back from the vacation home, the initial Christmas trip that we took. We said, I wonder if we could do this. And what we did, Nate, was we found out like with the same budget that we had, we could be in all these other places. That's what we did. And so it wasn't like we weren't earning more money. Actually, for a little while, I was earning less when we started. And to be very frank with you, at the beginning part of this, we didn't leave our home to do this, but some of our first trips were in tents. We can afford tents. Well, let's get a tent, and those were adventurous. But excuse me, when you were talking, it just made me think. It's almost like can you imagine watching a movie where there's an extra, we see the people that are walking always in the background, and they do whatever. Can you imagine if that person decided that just suddenly something clicked and they pushed the star out of the way and they became the star of the movie? That's almost like what I feel. It's almost like life gets lived for us. We kind of get these patterns given to us. It's a default. And there's nothing wrong with that, but at some point, I think we all feel that urge to step over the line and to go do something. Now, one of the things I will say is that I believe that our it's not all bound up in us. Ideas, purpose, any of these things. It's almost like your networking message is so pivotal because I believe that often half of the message is a buried treasure, and that treasure is buried inside of another person. So just like it takes the DNA of two people to make a baby, I believe that also the same is true of ideas and businesses and purpose and those type of things. A lot of times we have to pull from other people. It's not just what we have on our own. We're all on a journey. We need other people to help us to get there. And so that's why, by the way, I think your networking message can be
well, it starts off when you say networking and people are like, oh, it's like collecting business cards and shaking hands and making cold calls. And it's really not. It's really about finding deep, meaningful connections. And you're in a sense looking for that treasure. And it doesn't always have to be this massive lifestyle change. But every time I think about some of the most I don't know if that's a better word to do other than productive, but just a period in time when I felt like whatever I was really into was really, really, really clicking and it was exciting and it didn't feel like work. It tended to be getting wrapped up with people that were like-minded on the same kind of mission. And you would just be so into something and it didn't feel like work. It didn't feel like effort. It just felt like fun. And you'd kind of go man, was I even working at that period of time, or was I just goofing off? But you look at what you accomplished and the level you did, and it's I think you're right. You don't get that feeling by yourself, and other people don't get it either. And sometimes it's you may not be the catalyst, or you may not be the one that motivates people to feel this way. It's that you're bringing energies and frequencies all in alignment, and you're hey, for this brief moment and the time, we're going to accomplish something really good. And that might just be something small, a little hobby group you're into, or it could be creating a business that changes the world. But I think there's nobody that's really done anything really, really massive without accumulating a team of people to help them get there. And if you don't have that team and support, it's hard to really do anything super, super meaningful and powerful for the world. My question for you. So where did you start pivoting your model into the purpose-driven leaders? And if people are working with you, what are the types of things who are the types of people you like to work with, and what can they expect with working with you?
Yeah. So I pivoted my model. So someone heard that initial podcast, the Sales Heroes podcast, and they connected with me and they said, hey, wow, you might be a good sales coach with this company. And so they recruited me, and I fell in love with the mission of what they were doing, and did some really great things. And that's what started our traveling. It didn't matter where we lived. In the midst of that, I would coach I would be coaching at any given time 36 different ultra producers and executives at that point. So usually it's like salespeople and executives. And what ended up happening was along the way, first off, that's a lot of people. It is a lot of people to be coaching. And, along the way, I began to realize that there like within that group, there's sometimes I'd wake up with a pit in my stomach. And then other times I'm like, oh, yes, I get to hang out with this person. And it was kind of like what you were saying is like work wasn't work. It was more like play.
Yeah. And
so I realized that I knew who my people were, the ones that I loved to serve. And I decided, about a year and a half ago that I would build something that let me spend the rest of my life with the people I love the most. And so that was, for me, those are purpose-driven executives. Those are purpose-driven leaders. Those are people who are trying to not only, profit and produce and create great things in companies, which I love, but also like they're doing it with meaning and with purpose. And like the ones that I love working with the most are the ones who are able to look a little bit into their own DNA and say, I'm a little bit weird, but that weird is good. Like it's like being able to acknowledge that your uniquenesses and your differences, that's actually what makes you valuable. And to say, well, how can we actually create a system around that? And can I actually work on a team of people that I love instead of just taking whoever comes my way? And can we actually grow our business in a way that feels more in alignment with myself rather than just doing some random sales practice that's slanted a different way? And so my favorite people are people that I get to almost like release the beast out of the cage and then create systems for them that allow them to maximize from their uniquenesses, their gifts and their talents to serve their people. And we create systems to go and do that. And so I work with every industry from, commercial real estate, financial advising, mortgage people to, I've worked with people who run funeral homes. And so, a lot of times I do like the leaders, and I also like producers as well. So if they're leading and maybe doing a little bit of sales stuff, that's fun. A lot of times I find myself building sales processes for them. But the reality is that we can take all of these and bring it into an act of love and not an act of war. We can make, I want to help them to have what I have, which is you can actually create a space where you are spending the rest of your life with the people you love the most. And that's your team and that's your clients. And we can get rid of the toothaches and we can make this thing sweet if you let it be. So those are the people I serve.
I look at this. There's this kind of like reoccurring theme there, and it started with your story about asking your wife, why not us? And it reminds me of like when Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks won the Super Bowl, and then he was talking about his dad used to say, somebody's got to win the Super Bowl. Why not you? Why not you? As a kid, it's like, why not you? Somebody's got to do it. Like, why can't it be you? And that always stuck in my head. Like, why not me? Like, ask yourself, why not me? Why can't it be me? And then you start saying like, you look at your idols or the people you want to emulate your business off, and you say like, I could do that. Why not me? But then you think, well, I couldn't do that because I got a little bit of weirdness in me, a little bit of a side that like I'm embarrassed to show people, and we hold it back inside. And you said, we kind of grow up with a little bit of restraints, and you see people, like for me, I always see people like, I wish I could be so comfortable that I could, just be bold and be obnoxious and be just super like, flamboyant. And you're just like, wow, like there's people out there that they're truly being who they feel like they should be. And they're very open about how they feel and their opinions and stuff like that. And I always would get like reserved. But then as I started down this process, and I started kind of realizing like, hey, it's okay to talk about the things that I feel, or let my weirdness out, or let my personality show. Like, I don't have to put on a facade, because now I'm relating with people, and I started connecting with people on a different level when I stopped holding my guards back. And I think that having a coach that helps you figure out like it's not weirdness. It's just you. It's who you are as a person that people like, and people like you. Not everybody will like the you that you are, but the people that you really want to connect with, the people that you really want to work with that are going to make work feel like a lot of fun and a bunch of horseplay are the people that are going to get you. So like, let it out. Be that person that people connect with.
And if I can give to you and your audience, man, one of the most freeing statements that you can ever have. And I think we all know this, but we just like, sometimes we forget it, especially in business and in sales. Not everyone's a fit for you.
Uh-huh.
Not everyone is a fit for you. Like, that's okay. Like, stop trying to force the fit. But for every second that you spend with someone that's not a fit, trying to shoehorn it in, you're missing an opportunity to be connected with someone who's really cool, and who's going to get you, who's going to get your business, who's going to get your quirkiness. And it's like, there are so many people out there right now. There's so many opportunities to connect with those people. Don't waste your time. Don't try to make a believer out of an unbeliever. Just find the people who are already slanted your way. And like, it's never been easier to find your tribe within right now.
Mm-hmm.
So not everyone's a fit, but some people are.
Yeah.
And like, that's what we want to focus on. And
and I've had experience too, where I've tried to make a non-fit work, and it just soured the whole experience, and it makes you want to quit, or you might quit, and then you never get to do the people.
It stops you.
Serve the people you'd be passionate to meeting. So,
and the facade you were talking about earlier too, like, it's like, how much energy does that take? How much? Like, here's an example. Our youngest son, Ephraim, when he was at school, so we've been homeschooling obviously since we started our adventure. Nate, we lived this quarantine life before it was cool. And so here Ephie he would come home from school and he was a terror. Like, he was just mean, and like, we're like, what's going on with this kid? And then we would show up for the parent teacher conference stuff and all of those things. And everyone at the whole school, they're like, oh my gosh, he is the most perfect kid. He is like the sweetest. He's the kindest. He's everyone's favorite. All the kids loved him. All the teachers loved him. And we realized what was happening. He's has an entertainer personality, such a people pleasing, thing in him, that he would put all of his energy there, so that when he got home, like, it was all gone, and he would just become an animal. And when we have to come to terms with the fact that when we have to have this professional facade, or this other image or that other image, that takes a lot of energy. And ultimately, we're going to come home and want to kick the dog because, like, we're not really living in alignment with our true self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So, Donnie, I've had a awesome time chatting with you, and the minutes just flew by. But I do got to not take too much more of your time. So let me ask you, people want to find out more about you. People want to get to know you. Maybe somebody wants to work with you, figure out, who their inner beast is, and get their way out. Where can they find you?
So, they can find me on LinkedIn, or they can go to my website, DonnieTuttle.com. But something like, if you're in sales and selling, one of my initiatives right now with this whole COVID-19 thing happening is I've been really focusing on, my whole journey was being able to sell anywhere. It's different. It just is different from now everyone's thrust into this. So I've put together my COVID emergency home survival pack, and it's free. And so they can go to thesalesclassroom.com, and they'll see up in the very top right something that will invite them into that course. And so it's free. You get to hang out with me for 5 or 6 video episodes, and it'll hopefully make you a better worker, a better family person, all of those things, so you can survive and thrive during this COVID thing. So that's on thesalesclassroom.com, and definitely welcome anyone to be a part of that. And so that's where you can.
That's awesome.
Get on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn's a great spot. I always encourage people, just get on there and start commenting, start liking people's stuff, and see where it goes. It's a ton of fun and easy to meet people. I think people there, for the most part, are also there to meet people as well. So, there's a one-on-one relationship. It's not like Instagram where I could have 1 million followers and I only follow 100. Like if I got, followers the same, if I'm following you, you're following me, and it's a one-on-one connection. So I love it. LinkedIn's great. So I'll put all those links in the show notes. And Donnie, again, thank you. I've had a blast talking with you, and definitely we need to stay connected and stay in touch.
All right, my man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.